This is Support is Sexy, episode 517. Guard your energy. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Support is Sexy podcast. I'm happy to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And we're continuing our rewind, so looking back on some episodes that really resonated with you and with me over the past couple of years since I began doing the podcast in July of 2016. And I'm doing this while I do some traveling over the next couple of weeks. More on that later if you don't already know about that. But today's episode I thought was a powerful one. One, because she's a powerful woman, Miss Latham Thomas, who was a guest on the podcast back in September 2017. So she was originally episode 302. And Latham is also known as Glow Maven, so you may see her all around social media with that moniker, Glow Maven. She is an author and a celebrity doula and a birthing expert. So we talk about that process in here, about her building her business and what it means to be a fantastic doula. But also, Latham mentioned something that I think is important for mothers, certainly, but for all of us. The importance of guarding your energy, especially when you're going into a period of new beginnings for you. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode because I know a lot of you are birthing some great ideas out there. So without further ado, Latham Thomas. So Latham, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm happy to talk to you.
I'm so glad to be here, Elayne. Thank you.
Of course. So first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
You know, I think that I've always had this in my blood, really, an affinity for owning my journey. And I think that part of the entrepreneurial journey for me has been one of self-discovery and one of purpose and mission-driven always. And so what I found is that I feel most aligned with what I'm supposed to be doing and called to the work that comes through me rather than, finding the spaces in the world that might accommodate what I have to offer. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is that I believe some people come here, well, everyone comes here on mission, when they're born, but I believe that some people find their way and realize that they might be ahead of the curve with some ideas that they have, or they might feel like they're outcasts, or they might feel like there's no space for what it is that they are doing. And so they're alone often. And those people who are risk friendly and who are forward thinking and who are really like breaking boxes open, you know what I mean? Instead of like working within those boxes, are very ripe for a path to entrepreneurship because it's one that is fraught with tips and turns and adventure, angst, as well as, challenge and triumph. And so I was always a kid that could, that was good in those types of environments. I was very good in competitive sports and things like that. And so for me, I think my little soul was like wrapped up in this energy of leadership. And so it was the right thing for me. I don't know that it's right for everyone, even though everyone feels like liberation around the idea of entrepreneurship. Not everyone has the discipline to stick with it and actually grow a business. It takes a lot more than what I think people look at on the outside, and they think, oh, it's so cool, you choose your own hours, or oh, it's so cool,
right?
I
choose to work 23 hours a day, basically.
Right, exactly. or the other thing too, Elayne, where people are like, oh, let me just call you in the middle of the day and just like start going into a conversation as if you're not working.
Right.
Or, so there's differences in how, the glamour or the grind looks. But I think that, people you have to want to do this, because there are so many impediments to your success along the way. There are so many challenges spiritually. And then there's so many like roadblocks that you kind of have to make it past. And the only way to do that is with faith and with patience, resilience, and showing up daily to be committed to growing something that takes time to grow.
Yes, amen to all of that. I think one of the things that you mentioned in there too is important. This idea of, well, first of all, I know, at least for me, it feels like entrepreneurship has become much more discussed and known about now. In the past couple of years, I would say people have been, sort of glamorizing it some, or just even being more interested in it. But early on, and let me know if you thought this, when I felt this feeling of I want to be an entrepreneur or own my own thing or whatever that looked like, even if I didn't have the language for it, there were times when it was, and still is, can be lonely because everyone else isn't making that choice or doesn't always understand that choice, or thinks, like you said, it's something that, oh, you just sit around, you're not really working, or, you get to make your own hours or that kind of thing. So I wanted to ask you, how did you sort of navigate the choice to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think that you're right about the fact that it's been a buzzword and really like a movement of people. And we see each other much more because of the gift of social media, which for a lot of entrepreneurs can be a curse because it's just like in the way of you getting things done. But it's also a great tool and powerful tool for marketing and being able to also build community. So I think that for me, it's like one of like daily practice of just showing up, even on the days that I don't feel as moved to go into the office or to get out of bed and do work, whatever it is. I show up every day and I do something that's committed towards the overall goals. And if you think about what you're doing in your movement of leadership and your purpose and the work that you do, whatever it is, it's all usually like linking back to a particular cause or solving a particular problem or servicing a particular population, like whatever that is, right? And so when you think about it, it all boils down to you doing something, you expanding yourself to benefit others, you pushing yourself to certain limits so that others can benefit. And so, I grew up with this mantra that so many of us, especially in the African American community, heard this growing up: to whom much is given, much is expected. Mm-hmm. And that was like, my mom would say that all the time. I just remember that being sort of in like our conversations and in the dialogue that was happening in the community around everyone invests in you. And then you go and you do the good work that benefits everyone else, right? So, I think that the people who buy a service or who invest in, supporting a product or whatever it is, are paying it forward. They're investing in you. They're investing in your future. They're paying your kids' tuition. This is part of that continuum. And so I look at it as largely connective and community oriented, even though a lot of times you feel like you're by yourself, or, I'm kind of like holed up in this office and nobody else is here and I'm just going to be grinding until, however late, or, you can't go do something in the summer because you're on a deadline, everybody else, whatever it is.
Right.
So I feel like those moments feel often, or seem like they're often, that we're having them alone. But we're part of a continuum of people who've made a decision and a choice really to listen to a calling and to honor that calling and do work that we feel fulfilled in. And so there's a difference between people who, are just working a job, to kind of make ends meet, or working a job because they're good at it, or working a job because, it's all they know and they don't have the courage to leave or to expand outside of that role, whatever it is. And there's a difference between people who say, I'm making a conscious, concerted effort to move in a direction of expansion, to move in a direction of being my best self, but also of achievement so that I can create a pathway as well as a blueprint for those to follow. So people can follow into my footsteps and also be blessed on their journeys, and whether I know them or not. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's part of our sacred dharma to, if we're meant to be doing this work as entrepreneurs, to stay on that path and do the work and be an example, a living example of someone that people can look up to, that people can aspire to. And then by you taking action, I think you inspire others around you to take action. But I do believe that like community is a big piece, just having folks that you can connect with, that you can ask questions of, that people who provide mentorship or just a listening ear is so important so that you can stay the course, because there are moments that are like real highs. And then you also have like your biggest lows, right? When you're running a business, and because there's no buffer, right? Like in other industries where, you're not in startup mode and there are, levels of organization as well as infrastructure, you're protected and, not everything falls on you. And if it's your company, you're the CEO or you're the president or you're the founder, or if it's just like a solo business, it's like you, then everything falls on you. And so that can be an enormous amount of pressure for people, as well as really lonely, right? If you don't often connect with your community outside of that.
Mm-hmm. Gotta have support.
Yes, that's why we have this podcast.
Exactly. Now, tell us your background, Latham, and where you grew up. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Oakland. I'm from Oakland.
Oakland.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I love all the people I know from Oakland are very cool. In fact, this woman, Adrienne, that I worked with at Essence, I used to call her Cool Breeze. Just very laid back.
Yeah, Oakland's an amazing place. I'm actually going there really soon. To visit some family. So yeah, I grew up in Oakland and really close to my grandmother and my aunts and everything. It was like a really great upbringing as a kid because we saw all of our relatives daily. Mm-hmm. It felt like I don't know how to describe this, but it felt like sleepovers every day. Like you would see Granny and then the cousins and then play and then go do your homework and then, have dinner together and then go to bed. Like everything felt really like a moment, which was really cool because I was always around people that loved me, that gave me different perspective outside of my mom. And so it was a great childhood. I had a little sister who's 5 years younger than me. And it was just the two of us in a single parent household, my mom. And, my mom is a very strong personality, an Aries, really strong personality in that she just, I would say like her personality is one where the two of us who are like Taurus children, are supposed to be really like stubborn and like real locking horns. We like wouldn't even stand up to her. We were just really docile. And so we came out very relaxed on top of coming from California. And so my upbringing, though, was great. I mean, I went to Catholic school as a child. I went to boarding school in Colorado as a teenager. I tested for a merit scholarship and actually was the award-winning recipient and attended boarding school for 4 years on this merit scholarship. And it was a really interesting experience and obviously eye-opening and expansive, having lived in California where it's pretty progressive and going to a place that was lacked diversity, but there was a diversity in the student body from around the world. And from there, I went to Columbia University and studied visual arts, environmental science for my bachelor's degree. And when I came out is when I was in school, I should say this for people who are kind of like at that end of school period or graduating from college or in that first kind of limbo year right after college, I came out of college, and while I was in there, I was just overhearing and like talking to friends and like hearing what they had going on. And everybody was like, sort of like prepping themselves and, priming and getting readying themselves for the workforce, whatever one that was, whether it was people who were going to go into law or finance or medicine. There was just this kind of track that people were on, if that's what they were doing. And they knew very clearly, and they were getting ready for all that. And I just kind of was like, even in high school, I thought like, I couldn't figure out when I was thinking what I wanted to do. It never dawned on me that I would go work at a company, like never, ever in life. And so I think I always was like, well, what am I going to do? So even in the interests that I had, I would always take the thing that I was interested in and then bring it into a place that valued that resource and would allow me to do that thing. And so when I say that, I mean, just because you're good at science doesn't mean that you have to work in a lab. You could, if you're great at science and visual art like I was, I didn't want to work in the labs. I didn't want to really do research. The type of research that I was interested in doing, I did while I was in school, working with professors, because I was very knowledgeable in plant systems and botany and had a background that allowed me to be able to work at the graduate level with some of my professors just during like breaks and stuff. And so I was able to do some of that because I had the skill set. And so then when I graduated, I worked with the Brooklyn Center for the Urban Environment and the Audubon Center to bring the early childhood education programs into the New York City public school system. And we would have kids come from all over, all the boroughs, to the Prospect Park, or we would go into the classrooms all over the city, where children were under-resourced in sciences, and help teachers to bring the outdoors indoors. And so I was able to bring skills that I already had and an interest that I had already had into a system that was lacking that, but that welcomed it. So think about, like, what is it that you have to offer that you love to do, that like really moves you to do? And even if it's not the full iteration of where you're headed with your work, if you're not someone who sees yourself working in a traditional, setting, like I was a contractor in this case, I still obviously had companies that I worked with or organizations that I worked with. You can still do that thing under that kind of, in that sort of format. So you still kind of have like a freelance umbrella that you operate under. You can do that to get your feet wet and see, does this feel good? Am I going to be able to sustain myself this way? What feels right about this? What do I need to change? Or like, I can't do this at all, whatever that looks like, explore before you decide, okay, I'm going to, go ahead and launch this company. Because I think that, people get really excited because they might have an idea, but it's not like fully baked.
Right.
Or
ideas is not necessarily a business.
Thank you. Right. So think about like, or it could be just like, a really great idea that can be sold to a business because you don't know how to execute it, or not even that you want to execute it. It's just something that, you thought of and that could be interesting. Like, think about where these things fit in your life and what you would want to devote your time to. And as you're finishing school, or if you're fresh out of school, or if you're just ready to move into this phase, like, so you're new into the workforce and that you're going to be moving into a more entrepreneurial role in your business, or leaving your job altogether and you're trying to get your feet wet. Like, think about contracting in your space with doing something that you're already good at and how that feels, so that you can get used to actually what it's like to wait on that paycheck, or to have to have space between. There's like feast or famine. We call it ant days and grasshopper days.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like some days it's just like it's real lean, and then other days you're like, we're going out and I'm paying for everybody, right? So there's different days. So kind of figure out what you have actual tolerance for, because often people are like, I'm going to launch this business, and then you see them like a year later and they're like, oh yeah, I'm not doing that anymore, I'm doing this. And so I think like I said in the beginning, faith is a big piece of it. You can't just kind of like decide you're out because things didn't go the way that you envisioned, or because it's not happening as quickly enough as you would like. So it is important to kind of get your feet wet and feel what it feels like to move in the direction of that as a goal, while working in the space and doing market research too, to see if like this is something that people actually want, what I'm headed towards. That's also good. I mean, that was me just fresh out of college using skills that I had. And so that I could actually support myself and make money, out of school and not be asking my parents for money while I figured things out. It wasn't until I was pregnant with my son that it was very clear to me what the business that I was supposed to be in, which obviously the sciences, natural science afforded me the ability to understand, obviously human physiology and the anatomy of labor and birth and all these things that I became very intimate with, plus my life experience of having a child. And then knowing that I needed to move in this direction, all that came also because of experience. But I also was primed with this need to create, to solve a problem. So I already was always looking to problem solve. And so this business only really stuck because there was a real problem to solve. And so I think about when we decide we want to do something, what's our impetus? Like, what's driving us to do that? Is it motivation or is it inspiration? And so they're both different in that, like, if we're motivated by something, it's not necessarily, heart driven. It could be, you're motivated by success. You're motivated by the visibility. You're motivated by, the celebrity, or motivated by the money, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. But inspiration, like being touched in your heart to do something, is completely different than the outcome, because when we're motivated, like, we're also moving towards a particular outcome. And when we're inspired, we're actually moving inward towards actually solving a problem that'll ultimately will get to like achieving those goals and hitting those benchmarks or whatever. But that's not the reason why you're doing it when you're inspired. So I think we have to get back to what's actually inspiring us to do this work, not what's motivating us. And so I think that people will say, I'm going to do this because they see other people doing it that are successful. So they'll say, okay, let me get on this train. Let me do this program. Let me, whatever it is, because I want to be like them. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. But what's actually calling you to do the work to begin with? Like, who are you looking to serve, or what is it that the world needs that only you can deliver? Figure out that, because that's the basis and foundation of what buoys the business for years to come. Like, what's going to hold it up so it can stand on its own and float, Right.
So with you then, during that one, I think your advice is genius for especially women who are in college and listening, or even if not in college. I also speak to a lot of women who are in a transition stage after they've been working somewhere for a long time, right? And they feel they want to be an entrepreneur and they're trying to figure it out right away, as opposed to what you mentioned, giving yourself some space, whatever that looks like, to experiment and try new things. And whether it's intern or apprentice or support people in other ways, just to find out if you're really interested in whatever you're doing. And then it leads you, as you mentioned, down the journey to decide what that thing is going to be for you. So, absolutely. Yeah. So in your journey then, when did you get to the point, or you mentioned being pregnant with your son, but at what point did it become clear to you what kind of business you wanted to create, and becoming a doula and all of the things that you do now?
It was really clear to me while I was pregnant. I think one of the first aha moments was when I called one of the OBGYNs or whatever to try to set up an appointment. And I'm having this great conversation with this woman. And then I'm like, okay, great. I'm ready to sign on, whatever. And she's like, okay, cool. So we can get you an appointment, and that'll be in May of 2003. Now, mind you, it was October of 2002. And I was like, that's like in 8 months, right? Like, that's so long. That's so far. And she was like, well, we're just like really backed up. And I'm like, yeah, but how does somebody get on your calendar? Like, do they have to plan their pregnancy around? Like, I don't understand. And so that was the first time that I was like, whoa, something's wrong here. Like, this is the most important process in a woman's life. And there's so many impediments to like understanding how to like journey it in a way that you feel supported. And like, nobody talks to anybody, like the nutritionists and the trainers and the doctors and the massage therapists and the physiotherapists, like nobody's talking to each other. And so I was like, oh, I got to do something about this.
And this was before you were pregnant.
Well, this is when I was pregnant in the very first weeks.
Wow.
Because I had no reason.
I'll see you 8 months from now.
Yeah, exactly. And I had no need before to look down that path because, it wasn't like I was so fascinated. I was fascinated, I should say, by the birth process since I was like 4 years old when my mom, my aunt, and my great aunt were all pregnant at the same time. That's put the little seed, in me at a very early age, but it didn't come full circle, until I was pregnant with my son. And that's when it kind of reactivated in me like, whoa, okay, I got to do something about this. I got to help women. And when he was born, probably within 20 minutes of his birth, I said to the midwife, I said to my friend who was in the room, his father, like everybody who was in the room, I was like, I have to protect this process for women. I had a beautiful birth. I felt honored and supported. And, just what I didn't understand was that every story that was told to me that people volunteered that I didn't even want to hear was negative. And what I was experiencing was completely opposite from what I was being told. And so I was like, I have to help. So
now, was that because, sorry to interrupt, was that because you created a different kind of experience because of the negative things you had heard and you thought, okay, that's not going to be my experience, like having a midwife there in addition to your doctor and that kind of thing? Were you determined to create a different birthing experience for yourself?
I didn't have any other framework for an experience because I didn't know until people started telling me that, that they had these crazy experiences in labor. It didn't even enter my mind that was a possibility. And I also, because I wasn't educated on the actual business of birth, I was educated on the science. So I knew what my body could do. And I also was coming from, a background of understanding how plants and animals work. So I was like, this is a very like primal process and this is how it'll work. And this is what my brain will do. And so I understood like what would happen in an ideal setting, but I also understood the deeply spiritual aspect of it. And I grew up in like a setting where birth and breastfeeding and these things were normal. So it wasn't like I was creating this experience in spite of. It was like, this is what I knew I intuitively wanted to do and what felt right. And I just moved the direction of what felt right always. So, but I heard people say stuff and people shared things as they do. And I was like, okay. I would listen and I'm like, all right, well, whatever. Like, what am I going to, like, that's not my experience. I hope it doesn't happen or whatever, but I wasn't internalizing it. I just was like actually surprised that people would put that on women who were about to have a journey of their own. And so, I just found it to be one of those things where people were well-meaning, but it wasn't necessarily like good advice or wasn't necessarily a good idea to share those types of things. So I had a midwife and my son was born in a birth center in New York City, the only freestanding birth center, which has since closed. And freestanding just means that it's on its own without connection to a hospital. So if there was an emergency, there was a hospital 2 blocks away, which also is gone, St. Vincent's Hospital, where they would transfer you if there was like a medical emergency. But they operated under the impression that women's bodies are powerful and this is a normal process and it doesn't need to be treated as a medical event, as a life event. And so, yeah, that's how my son was born, in that kind of environment with that type of energy and that type of belief system. And so there was only courage, like in the room, and trust. And so I wanted to help women no matter what environment they were going to be in, whether it was a house, a hospital, home birth, whatever it was, birth center, wherever, that I could help them have the experience that they want, or help them to have an experience, whatever that one is, that they feel safe and secure and empowered, and not leave that experience wishing like they shoulda, coulda, woulda, or wish it happened another way. And so it's a process that needs to be protected. And so I deeply knew in the moments after my son was born, I was like, oh yeah, like people are getting gypped. Like they don't know that it could be this, Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what it was. It was more like this, like women need to know. And so, and I had already compiled all this information around just like the products and the practitioners and the services and the things that we should sort of like tune into as we take this journey. And what ended up happening is I created this book in 2012 that came out called Mama Glow, and that was a best-selling book. And then I went on to, we had Mama Glow, the company that was founded in 2011 after our film festival. So all these things stemmed, though, from the fact that I had a baby. Mm-hmm. And so my son always reminds me that if it weren't for him, there would not be Mama Glow.
I am the reason, right?
Right. He's very clear that he inspired it, and he did. And so I think that, making space for inspiration, right? Instead of me saying, okay, I'm going to do this job or I'm going to create this, it was like it came through me. It was really channeled, like this is what you're supposed to be doing. As well, I had a Vedic astrology reading when I was teaching at this ashram, and this Vedic astrologer, like 4 feet tall, mm-hmm. comes up to me, and it was my birthday. He's like, I have to do a reading on you. I was like, great. So we do this reading, and he's doing this whole divination reading, and he comes down to only a few words in English, by the way, and he says, "You're supposed to mother the mother," and it was so crystal clear. I get chills when I say it because I know what he meant then. And I knew that he meant being a doula because at that point I was doing all this other work to support moms, and I hadn't incorporated that into the business model yet. And once I did, and only because I listened to not just what he said, there was a date that correlated with a program that I applied for, which I don't even remember applying to, by the way. And the acceptance date on that, the timestamp or whatever, on that letter was one of the key numbers that he gave me in that reading. And then I was like, okay, God, noted, right? Like right. Accepted, I'm on path, right? And once that came through and once I committed to this, every door opened. It was like I was supposed to be doing that. And so I think that, part of what we also should be looking for in our journey is affirmation and confirmation, right? Like not just like, oh, I want to do this because, or this is what I'm going to do, or I want to say this. Like look for what you're meant to say. Listen for what like people need or whatever it is, your target market or your audience or whatever. Listen first, because oftentimes we think that we're supposed to deliver something and it might not be what people actually need, mm-hmm. or it might not be, or you might not be the person to deliver that exact version of whatever it is, or maybe just not yet. And then there's other times where it's so clear, it's revealed to you repeatedly something that you're meant to do, and you don't listen to that because you're so focused on the other stuff. You're like, oh, no, I'm already doing this. It's like, no, you're supposed to do this thing over here that keeps showing up over and over and over, and people keep asking and whatever. You're supposed to go to that place and grow yourself in that area that you seem to not want to address or you seem to want to neglect. Like, look into that and how that can be of service to your larger mission or to your larger business model, and how you can integrate it even if you don't feel ready. Because sometimes those things that keep showing up are the things that like actually tip the business. And for me, it was doula. Like that's the largest part of our business is a doula business. And it was like in the beginning, obviously I was working with moms, but I was doing like more nutrition and yoga. And we had all these other manners of working with moms, like to prepare them spiritually. And then we would be like, okay, cool. Like see you after the birth, whatever. And like, no, this was an integral part of helping women to prepare for this process. And also, you know, I believe that there's many people who are in this movement. I'm not like I'm one of many people who are on the vanguard of really helping women to see their bodies in a different way and helping culture to perceive the birth process differently. I'm not the only one. However, I have been really blessed to be able to use the power of influence and celebrity through my clients to help transform a movement and help to reclaim a space for women that's safe around birth. And so that has created visibility for Mama Glow, obviously visibility for me as a person, but not for me. So that's for the brand so that it can do better work and continue to help more people. So all of that is great. Like I love interviews. I love, you know, whatever it is that amplifies, you know, my voice in the world, but it's not for me. And I think that part of what we should be looking at too is like all these opportunities that come are a vessel for communication. It's like an opportunity to amplify your communication objective and to be able to reach more people that need that thing, that work or that product. So see like how you can use your voice in a way that that whenever you channel it through an article or you channel it through an interview or a video or whatever it is, that the things that you say touch people, and make sure that you do things that are aligned with what your work is. Like there's thousands of podcasts, right? Am I going on all of them? No. I'm going on the ones that I believe are aligned and that have listeners that are also on a path, right? Because you want your message to fall on the right ears. And the people who find you have found you because you're like, it's like we're all swimming in the same water, right? And so I think that that's really important. And that it goes back to like your whole vision for this podcast, which is support, right? Like we have to find our container, you know, like where we need to like reside. We got to find that place as you build the business. Before you go any place with it, you have to have that container first, right? It's like that holds you together so that you can hold together the business, having that anchor of support and a foundation of knowledge of self, but also knowledge of brand. And if it's yourself or if it's, you know, a brand ethos that's really tied to you as a person, you have to have that kind of knowledge and understanding so that you know where you begin and where you end, what it is that you do and that you don't do, what is it that your brand says and does not say, what your Instagram should be looking like, you know, all these things that are very important, right? These are things that we can practice today. So you don't have to have like $1 million business right now. You don't have to have you could have like a very low bank account right now, but be investing in yourself by creating good content and sharing that content, and then gathering people who start to listen to you, and then packaging things based on their needs. Like there's a lot of stuff that you can do to get your feet wet without having to, without, I guess, judging yourself or blaming yourself for not having what other people have.
Right. Right. I was going to say comparing. Yes.
Exactly. The comparisons,
yes.
the comparison. And the fact that we do, so many people are out here, I feel like, who do such a great job of keeping you focused on like what you're doing and minding your own business. But it's really hard if you're on your devices all day. So I would challenge people to do what I do, call phone fasting, just like maybe one day a week at least, where you don't go on any of that. And especially during your work day, try not to be flipping through your social as much, because it takes a lot of cognitive energy. It actually drains you emotionally. It creates anxiety. Mm-hmm. It increases blood pressure. It increases, what do you call it? Like absent-mindedness, like all these things by being on an electronic device, plus, all the signals because of the LED screen and that reflecting off your eyes. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens. But outside of that, just on the fact that it wastes hours and hours of life that you're spending on that you could actually be investing in business building. And so think about that too, like where do you spend your time? I know for me, that was something that I learned early on because I don't grow up with this technology. This technology, I had to learn as an adult. And, the generations below us, like my son's generation, which is like 14, they grow up in this. Like this is part of.
They don't know anything else.
Yeah, they're like, what? Like put the phone down. You know what I mean? They don't get it. And so, so we need to also do that, make sure that we take this time out so that we can kind of like reboot ourselves and make sure that we're still operating within our mission.
So that leads us perfectly into talking about your upcoming book, which I'm excited about, Own Your Glow. A soulful guide to luminous, loving, and crowning the queen within. Love that. Now, tell us, what does it mean to own your glow? Mama Glow is your brand, what you're all about, and, all of the fantastic things you mentioned to us that you do through your brand. But what does it mean to own your glow?
Yeah, so owning your glow is really a awakening call to women to return home to themselves. It's really about us reclaiming our bodies as sacred, using self-care as a pathway to our empowerment, and creating the lives that we really want to live and living on our own terms. It's like putting those shoulders back and putting your head held high and putting your crown back on. I know the weight of the crown is heavy, but we got to stand tall. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's just about like standing in your power and moving through life with grace and ease instead of, forcefully. I think one of the biggest things in the entrepreneurial world in terms of how can I say this? I think this is one of the most pervasive attitudes that is destructive, I should say. And I talk about this in the book, but I'm going to talk about it now, which is this idea of hustling, making it happen, rushing, hurry up and launch, like do it even if it's not ready. You can always change it later. That is destructive. And I'll tell you why. Because so many women who have bought into this idea of, doing things themselves and rushing through and hurrying up and, this competitive model of productivity are operating from a place of already a broken system that's honoring a more patriarchal, corporate type of model for success, right? And so that success is modeled kind of in this like pyramid or ladder kind of scheme, right? Mm-hmm. And so we are, as women who are awakened and moving into leadership from a more femme entrepreneurship model, should be also operating from a more feminine foundation as we build that. So instead of using the tools of the system that are already in place, we have to go outside of that and actually go into self and start to resource our own tools and create our own systems that set up a foundation for us to build from so that we really are aligned as we move through our work constantly. So all these things that I'm saying about, check for alignment and like slow down and like listen and intuit and, practice and reflect and all these things that they all take time to do. I think that one of the things that we don't look at is, and I see so clearly because I work with women at the threshold of change, like in my life, right? But I also see things that take forever to transpire, right? Like somebody works with me, I could start working with somebody now that doesn't have a baby until next year. Like people aren't thinking like that, right? Like, wait, what? Like I'm in a process that takes like 40 weeks or sometimes more, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes up to 41, 42 with babies. So I know that patience is a virtue, but I know that patience is something that people have very little of. However, everything that we want to build, whether it's a business or write a book or, a relationship or a screenplay or a family, takes time. And so it also takes grace, it takes patience, but you also have to plant and you have to water and you have to
nurture, right?
Nurture.
But we live in such a society of immediacy, right?
Right. And this accelerated living forces you to think like, oh, I could just hurry up and do this, right? But think about that immediacy, like half the time when you do something that you weren't ready to do, or when you had to hurry up and do it. And when you look back at that thing, do you believe in it? Can you stand by that thing that you put out in a rush? Mm-hmm. Or, think about the this idea of I'm going to launch this now, even though it's not ready, for what? So that you can, to maximize what? Profit? Instead of waiting and saying, let me do this when it feels right, when it looks right, when I got to hire a new graphics person. I didn't like the first run. I'm just going to, no, do the right thing and in the right time. Don't be forced into time constraints that don't feel aligned with, and check in with your body, which is very clear. Your body will be like in knots, like your tummy will be in knots. You'll be nervous. Your hands can get clammy. Your heart will beat faster. You'll be like asking people for advice, and then when it's a yes, like, oh, this is the right time, you feel elated and light. And there's a difference in how you feel when you're doing something, when you know it's the right time. And so sometimes you procrastinate.
Sorry to interrupt. You were going to talk about procrastination. I was just going to say the right time, though, is different than waiting for everything to be perfect.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. In actual perfection, if you think about perfection is not in everything being a certain way through a certain lens. Perfection is in the time that something takes to run its course. It's process. Perfection is in process. Mm-hmm. So when we think about like a flower that comes into bloom or a piece of fruit that ripens, and like an apple is an apple, even if it looks like you see not bruised ones, but you see different shapes of apples, different mm-hmm. shapes of tomatoes, whatever, that's still perfection. It's not about looking a certain way or being a certain way. It's the essence of the work put in, that's the perfection, is actually the process is the perfection. Instead of focusing all your energy on output and product and things that people can actually see, focus on what you're cultivating within, what you're cultivating in darkness, right? Like moms are focused their energy on the baby that's growing inside of them and feeding their baby and feeding themselves so they're nourished from within, right? We have to nourish our businesses from within structurally. We have to nourish. And so that is not about hustle and make it happen. It's more about letting it happen. It's more about allowing things to come. It's more about focusing on your work first instead of trying to get on Oprah or mm-hmm. trying to get on Dr. Oz or trying to get on the cover of this or that. Like that all can come not through motivation, but that all can come through the work that you're inspired to do as a result, like as a byproduct of you doing the work. And so people have to get more into, focusing on this nurturing aspect of their work versus this kind of competitive, push out everything that you can, at the fastest rate possible for the most productivity possible to make the most money possible. Like, we got to stop operating like that. That's not feminine. Feminine is everything slow, with us, not saying that you have to move slow, but meaning that you have to take your time. And if you look at all of the feminine processes, whether it's menstruation, whether it's, birth, all these things that happen in our bodies are processes that take time.
Mm-hmm. And so you can't rush through them no matter what you can.
You cannot rush. Yeah. And then if you try, you are punished. You know what I mean? Exactly. It's like the body is not having that. The body's not having that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we got to take our time.
And you're an example, I think, of what you mentioned, a shining example of some of these fantastic results being a byproduct of the work and the dedication to the work and taking your time and sort of allowing things to unfold, as you mentioned, with Oprah being a part of the SuperSoul 100. Is that what it was called? Yeah, being a part of the SuperSoul 100 and working with celebrities, which I know a lot of people sort of mentioning, as we talked about with social media, see, you're with DJ Khaled and his wife or someone else and you're working with them and, oh, I want to do that. Well, that's a byproduct of the work that you've done.
That's right.
Right.
And it's certainly not like the goal was not that. The goal was, I want to help women in this process. I want to transform the way that women see their bodies and the way that culture looks at our bodies in this process. And in order to do that, God or the universe or spirit, whatever you want to call, has lined up certain opportunities for me to be able to be a vessel for that, so that people in all corners of the world can say like, wow, I didn't know it could be that way. I didn't know that it was possible to have a doula. I didn't even know what that was, or I didn't even know. Like, this is why, not for my ego, not for anything else, but for me to transform a life and to bless the lives of the people who that baby is coming through, and to support that child at the most important time in their life, which is their birthday. And then to also use that as a way to also encourage more doulas to come to, and especially right now, we need more people to be able to serve in this capacity. So I see it as an opportunity to also inspire. And I want to say one thing about social media, which is a really great branding tool. I use social media for a few purposes, and I want people to think about this, because I talk to entrepreneurs a lot, as I know you do, and I hear from people a lot. And I have to say that Instagram is like the new blog, right? So you're going there, so the things that you put there, just know that it's like a resume, and it's also something that people use to get a sense of like who you are. So it's okay to go through and actually edit your feed and delete things that don't represent your brand identity. It's okay to go through and actually do an exercise where you figure out like what is it that should live on your pages. And then also, there's a tool that I use, which I actually learned from a marketer at, I forget where I was, at some conference. It was something so long ago. I learned nothing else except for this. And he said there's this I guess it's an acronym. Yes, an acronym that he uses to gauge whether or not he should share something. And it's called ICE. And I live by this. And when I heard him say it, I was like, yes, that's exactly what I've been doing. But now there's an actual acronym. Great.
And this is across all platforms.
This is across all platforms.
Okay.
So let's think about this and make sure that this resonates for you, because then you should use it. So ICE. So is it informative? Right? So is it sharing something that people learn, they're going to grow, it's, it's supportive, whatever. C, is it connective? Does it draw people together? Like, you put something up and all of a sudden there's conversation and all kinds of, chatter, comments, people connecting, or does it draw you to your audience through connection? Entertaining. Is it something that, entertains, that like gives people like uplift, but also, opens their eyes to something? And the last one is educational. And so, educational, obviously, are they learning something from it? Actually, the first one, the I, is not information, it's inspiration. So it's inspiration, connective, educational, or entertaining. Yeah. So it has to be those four. If it's not those four, then you shouldn't be posting it, because then it's confusing to people what it is you're about. If you're about lifestyle, for instance, or if you're about, so for Elayne to share something about entrepreneurship, those would be the lenses that would make sense. Right. Like inspiring people to be better at it. Connecting the dots for people, like with other people, like, hey, this is like an amazing entrepreneur that I met, and here's her story or whatever, and you should connect with her here. And what about some people that you all have met, tag here? Like, then that's like a way to connect, right? Educational, obvious, that's obvious. I don't even need to elaborate, but like, what can we, teach people? What kind of tools can we share through social or through our blog? And then the, what was the last one? I forgot. Entertaining. Right. And then entertaining. It's like, yes, it has to be something that, can provide a moment of joy or, whatever. So, but doesn't have to be all those things at once. It could be one of those things. There could be something that stands out for you. But like, if you look at somebody like the Fat Jewish who's got like millions and millions, I think he has like 10 million, I don't know how many followers, but his is only about entertainment, right? So, so that's his thing. And then some people are like only about inspiration. That's their thing. Some people are about, education, but they've chosen something and they use that as a lens to work through.
Right.
And so
like
thinking about that.
For you.
Yeah. So if it's just like, oh, hey, woke up wearing blue shoes, like that's not necessary to share.
Right.
So like, let's think about this and let's go through our feeds and see like where we're doing stuff that doesn't align with the message. Is there like a post that you wouldn't want somebody to land on? You need to go and clean up your feed. So think about that as you move through too, as you use these channels. If you want to have a personal one where it's just you and your friends, and have that, and then figure out where your brand is going to live if your brand is not directly associated with you as a person, because we do have to make sure that we use these tools in a way that that empower others, but that also lift our message. So I just wanted to say that about social media, because I see people who will say, oh, I do this or whatever, and then I'll go and I'm like, well, that's not actually clear when I look at the feed, right? And so, so we do want to make sure that we use the power of social in this way. And I know, you go into stuff like this with people, so I don't even have to say anything about it.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's excellent advice. And I think it's funny. It leads perfectly into another question I wanted to ask you from the book. There's a chapter called excavation. So speaking of cleaning your feed, this sort of falls into that. And one of the quotes, it says, you say, sometimes God will move a perceived obstacle that you can't move on from on your own, a job, a relationship, a beautiful home. And sometimes we need to do the work of identifying those obstacles ourselves, be they harmful ideas, behaviors, or even people, and then let them go. So cleaning your feed, right? So I wanted to ask you, what's something that you have had to let go of recently, and how has it cleared the way for you?
That's a great question. I know in the book I talk about the fire that I had in my home, and, that was like a big one. And, I want people to read it because they can see like the perspective that I took, but it wasn't instant. I did have to move through that process to get to the other side and be like, whoa. But I will say something more recent would be friendships. We often think that just because we're on a journey and there's people that are around us as we take that journey, that they're going to be there, and that they're going to be there till the end, and that we're going to be rocking with them, we're going to love them, and they're going to love us, and it's going to be all kumbaya. And what happens sometimes is that, you enter into your path, or you step on, you step onto this journey that you're taking. And there's people around you at whatever level of growth that they're at, and you are too at the level of growth or, wokeness or consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that you're at, right? And then you start to do something called growing. And then what happens is there are people that you've been surrounded by, and you start to look, and you're like, we don't seem the same, or we're not doing the same work, or we're not aligned in terms of what we want to bring to the world. And it doesn't mean that, oh, you're not an entrepreneur just like me, or, we don't have the same beliefs or share the same beliefs. You don't have to share the same beliefs, but there has to be an underlying feeling of support, and being able to recognize someone. Like when I look at you, that there's a soul recognition that yeah, I see me, but I also see you. And when you get to this place where like people disappoint or people aren't interested in doing their own work to be with you as a friend, I think that everybody can't come. It's like, like Jay-Z said, it ain't for everybody, it's like everybody cannot come. And also it's like, there are people who you will meet that are like instant family, and you will have known them for like a few months or a year. And there's people who you've been on the path with for like 7-8 years, and you're like, what happened? Mm-hmm. So know that nothing that you've invested is for naught. Like everything is all good. Even if you have to let somebody go along the way, it makes more space for what's to come. Just think about it like, when you get to the airport and you got one of them bags and it's too heavy, they don't let you on the plane. They're like, you got to check this bag, or you got to empty it out. You got to think about, what do I need to let go that's making it hard for me to carry? Like, what do I need to release and let go? And sometimes it is relationships. And so for me, I'm really good at editing my life in terms of the relationships that I have. And not meaning that I don't talk to people or I cut them off, but it's more just like, I just examine like what's happening in this dynamic, And I've been disappointed by some people, especially in the times that we're in with this political climate and the administration that we have. And I've seen some true colors of people who it's like I wasn't prepared to see these things from them. And what I mean is everybody has their way of showing support, but I feel like if you're in a position of leadership, if you're in a position of power, if you are a voice and you don't use it to speak up or use it in a powerful way to acknowledge the injustices and support the people that actually live up against that, then you're not honoring your friendships, because if you have these people in your lives who you call friends and you don't, you can't really see what is happening to them in this time that we're living and be able to use your voice to speak up, it's like, then to me, we're not using our power as leaders if we don't use our voices. And so that, for me, has been an interesting new journey to kind of like, basically clear out, just be like, oh, let me edit, or it could even be like, we're talking about editing your feed. It could just be like some voices that are just like, what are they talking about? Let me get this off, my phone.
I know. I do that too. Unfollow or like, I just don't need this right now.
Yeah, I don't need that. Let me unfollow. Solange just, I think, deleted her Twitter the other day. It's like people, because she was like, I'm out, right? Mm-hmm. I think that people have to remember that, there's energy behind the things that you send or the things that you post or the things that you share. And so, for me, it's like I expect out of leaders and out of people who are colleagues and out of people who are friends, I expect for us all to take a piece of the weight and carry it. Like it shouldn't be on just one person or just one group of people or whatever. I think that across the board, we have to lift each other and support each other. And so that to me is a sign of indifference when you don't, especially during times like these where it's crystal clear that there are attacks on people of all different backgrounds, attacks on women, attacks on people of color, attacks on religion. It's like you can't stand by and watch that and then have friends who are, living in fear and not speak to that injustice. So for me, it's as we move through these times and as we look at these tools that we use that connect us, you can also see how we're divided. And I just don't want to be on the side of the division. I want to be on the side of right. And I also want to make sure that the people that I'm looking at on the side of right are really trying to do right also. And so excavation for me has been about really looking at, the people that I keep close and what they're talking about, what they're posting or not posting, who, what they're trying to say to their communities, and are they even, in real life, are they even, nurturing or sharing or caring about what's going on with me or, with other friends, are they being a good friend really? Right. So,
right.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break to thank our sponsors. So if you're a solopreneur like me, you probably live by your schedule. You talk to people all around the world, from clients to freelancers. For me, podcast interviews that I have to set up. So my schedule means everything. And that is why I use Acuity Scheduling. Acuity has been my savior for the past year. It helps me, honestly, keep my sanity. And I was excited to get the chance to talk to Kristen Barber, Customer Happiness Specialist at Acuity, about just how the company goes about keeping their customers sane and happy.
So Acuity Scheduling is an online scheduling software program really focused on helping small businesses focus on what matters to them. So we take a lot of the day-to-day minutia off of your hands. We set it up so that you can have all of your clients self-schedule in, manage their appointments, reschedule, cancel if something comes up. You didn't have to call them and do this awkward back and forth dance of what date and time work for you. If anything changes, they don't need to call and let you know. They can just handle that all on your own and you're kept up to date. And it takes so much work off your plate so that you can focus on either building your business up with other aspects that a scheduling program can't handle, or go enjoy yourself.
And as a special offer for Support is Sexy listeners, Acuity Scheduling is offering a 45-day free trial just for you. So go to acuityscheduling.com/sexy. Again, that's ACUITY scheduling.com/sexy. And you can take advantage of any plan they have there for 45 days. At the end of that time, whatever plan you want to continue with, you can do that, or you can stick with the free plan. acuityscheduling.com/sexy.
We'll be keeping an eye out for you sexy ladies.
And now back to the show. What would you say that entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
I think this goes back to a little bit of what I was saying earlier about just like the process. Entrepreneurship has taught me to really embrace process and the process of cultivation, and to feel empowered in the journey, like to know that this is a choice and that I'm making my own rules, but that it's not like a checklist, of, desires and whatever. It's really about like making my own rules that help me to maintain well-being as I move through this process of business building and queendom building to support others. And so for me, it's been about, looking at different frameworks that exist, and seeing that a lot of that didn't really feel good to me. It didn't really feel good to say, all right, I'm going to, start a business in this particular way. I did not have any clue, by the way, how to start a business. I just started it. And I think that there's a very big blessing in naivete, because if I would have known from the beginning all of the challenges that come up as you grow a business, I may not have done it, or I might not have done it soon enough. But I think that it's taught me that there's freedom in choosing yourself and saying like, I do have something important to bring to the world, and let me go ahead and focus my energy there. And so it's built self-confidence in me. And it's taught me also to trust in myself and my voice. And yeah, I mean, those are the main lessons I feel like I learned. I learned so much about humility. I learned so much about listening. I mean, I learned all these different things. And it's interesting because all of these same values and lessons that I learned are applicable to parenthood, because you're growing something, you know. Mm-hmm. It's like as you're
birthing something and growing.
Yeah,
something.
Absolutely. But this thing is growing for a very long time before it sees the light of day, and before people even know about it, or before you're even prepared to talk about it, or whatever. And everything grows in the dark, right? Like all things grow in the dark, and so anything that it takes root has to come through you. And so I've learned to like be still with that and allow. And that's why it took so long to write the second book. I took my time. But also like in the work, it's like I look at it like it's my baby. I look at it like, you know, how I look at the clients and support them. I nurture. I really take my time with everything. Like we have so many projects that we're spinning, and everything's on a timeline. And then I come back, I'm like, no, that's going to be in September, or no, this is going to, you know, and I come back, I'm like, no, we need space. We need time. We need, you know, so I'm always the one who's like, slower is better. I'm always the one who's like, let's just get it right and take our time with it and give ourselves the time to like really expand and explore and be inspired to do this rather than just hurrying up on a timeline. And so it's interesting working with other people who come in and have other ways of doing things when they have to work with me. They're like, whoa, like I was thinking like we were going to do it. I'm like, nope, this is how we're doing it, you know? Mm-hmm. And so it is, I've learned a lot about like standing my ground too and saying like, no, this isn't right. Like, you know, whether it was for, you know, something that had to go into production and, you know, being on a timeline that was really fast. And I said, no, we're going to push this out and it's going to happen 6 months later and we're going to get it right. Like that to me is like, you know, because I'm at the helm of my business, I can say that. And I can feel confident in that I know the brand voice more than anyone else. And so those are the things that I learned, you know, but speaking up is a big piece of it. I think, you know, through your business, you have to operate from a compass of truth. And so that's really what I'm trying to do as I create value in the world.
So in closing, Latham, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
What I say to them? Mm-hmm. You know, it's not fair to make me pick one person.
I know. You know, it makes the question challenging.
It does. You know, this is a really good one. I think, so one person who's been impacted my life.
Who's had an influence over your critical to your career or your personal life, whose support has been critical.
Okay.
Who would that be and what would you say?
It's hard to say because I feel so many people have been in their own different ways a voice or a cheerleader. Well, I mean, I guess one of the this is hard. Okay, well, what I will say, though, before I say who I think the person is, because I'm trying to still establish that, I will say that there have also been other types of voices that have been critical in my growth because they were voices of constriction. They were voices of, like, doubt. And there were voices of well-meaning voices that actually were not meaning to turn me against myself, but that had, it's like somebody, sending you a gift, but it's like a rotten gift, right? It's like sometimes that happens where people say something and it's meant to, protect you or bring you into reality or whatever. And actually it plants seeds of doubt. So I can say that I've had those types of voices, and those types of voices also were helpful in shaping my resilience as I, went through building a business, because it's easy to be around people who love what you do and who fawn over you and think you're so great and whatever, because they don't have anything critical to say or challenging to say. And the voices that, and they've come through many people, like close and strangers, but many of whom I really, really respected what they had to say, who said things to me that were not necessarily unkind, but it felt, the way the words fell on me didn't feel good, right?
Didn't feel like support.
Mm-hmm. And so, but I have to say that when that happens, if you're so committed and you feel so moved by what you're meant to do, that you take that and you transmute it, you pour yourself back into what you're doing. Sometimes there is a nugget like, oh, wait, I didn't even think of it this way. Let me go back in and try to make an edit. Or it's just like, whoa, that was a lot. Let me just reflect, though. It's like, take the good and leave the rest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to do that with a lot of things. Mostly people just didn't understand. And so I got sick of saying over and over what it is that I do. But then I got really adept at it. And then it was easy for me to talk about what it is that I do, and very easy for me to communicate, and very easy for me to share. And so some of, those voices that were on the opposite side actually built resilience in me. So I want to say that sometimes, like, our haters are actually supporters, and not in a way that they even mean to be. And some of them are actually really hating on you, and you can float up to the top because you already know how to, like, dodge, that negative, forecasting or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to say that first, because I do think that I built some resilience because of that. Now, for the support, I think, there's people, but I want to say my mom only because my mom always is this person who, when there's an idea that she has, like, she sees something, she'll listen to me, and I'm like, okay, I'm in the inception of something, and she'll have this, like, she'll be at like the 5,000th step mm-hmm. of the process. She'll be like way over here. And I'm like, Mom, I'm just like actually at the seed level, just trying to, like, mm-hmm. you know what I mean? I'm just trying to actually get the idea on paper. And she's like, okay, and then we can do, and I'm like, whoa. So I love that she actually believes. She was not a believer in the beginning. Let me just say, she was like, what are you doing? Okay. But she wasn't a non-believer. She just wasn't like, she was just watching to see, well, like, are you going to fall on your face or is it going to happen, kind of thing. Right. But she is always our biggest ally and our biggest supporter and our biggest cheerleader. And I have to say that is very helpful to have, your mom. It's annoying when she brags about you, but it's awesome to know that she believes in you and what you have to share. But she also is one of those critical voices that will plant those seeds. And since I value her opinion so much, that it could sit on me the wrong way. And so I have to also have discernment when I'm opening up to her, because if she shares something or a different side of something that I'm not ready to hear, it can hurt me, or it can make me feel insecure or so. So I would say that she is on both sides of that, in that she's probably one of my harsher critics, but also one of my bigger supporters. So there's two sides to that support that I get from her. And I would definitely say that I have enough cheerleaders in my corner now, and I serve as one as well for many, and would love to continue in that way. But yeah, I think there's, for me in my personal journey, there's been those two sides of the coin that have helped me to kind of, be really able to take the criticism and also be able to, bask in all the glory too.
Excellent. That was a great answer. I love hearing
good.
both.
I was like, I can't find one.
No, that was great. I love hearing both. And to your point of hearing both sides of it, how the people who are the detractors can help us sort of get focused too, in addition to the people who do support us in their own way along the way. Mm-hmm. So now tell us how we can support you. I'll have links to everything, of course, and to your fantastic book, which comes out September
26th.
September 26th is the day. So I'll have links to that for everyone, but just tell everyone where they can find you, social media, anything else you want us to know.
Yeah, so I'm just Glow Maven on Instagram. It's GLOWMAVEN. And then our site is mamaglow.com if you're on your journey towards having a baby. If you're looking to learn more about the book, you can go to Own Your Glow, GLOW, thebook.com. And there's going to be everything about the book, plus a bunch of tour dates and fun stuff like that. I will be in a bunch of different U.S. cities, so people can go there and see where, hopefully I'm in their town and we can hang out and I can give you a hug and you can check out the book. Mm-hmm. But with the book, I do want to say one thing about support, and what I love about the fact that your podcast is called Support Sexy, that support comes in so many forms, and people often think that, well, what's my little voice going to do? Or what's my little purchase going to do? Or what's, why they have so many people, like they don't need me, or, Mm-hmm. And if we think about, if everybody's thinking that, then nobody buys. And also, if you think that your sale doesn't make a difference, it really does. And for women in particular, but I would say for women of color that are authors, there is like a different, like the way that we are judged in the sort of book category, there's some impediments to our success, right? And so what I would like to say is that every sale counts, and every person that goes out and calls their local bookstore and asks their bookstore to carry the book and pre-orders the book through the bookstore, that counts. And every Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Books for Million, whatever you're buying through, all of that counts. So don't think that your voice isn't saying something. So I just want people to know that, because we see that through so many different areas, especially like, a movie that succeeds. Like if we looked at Wonder Woman, for instance, mm-hmm. like that only worked because we went. All of us.
And Girls Trip. Oh my goodness.
And
went again and again.
Okay, we kept going, and I was going to say Girls Trip and how, but like, let's look at the two lenses. So if you look at Wonder Woman and you look at Girls Trip, for Wonder Woman, it was record numbers of women going, obviously, but they didn't do a breakdown like they did with Girls Trip, which is when people went to Girls Trip, they know the ages, the backgrounds, the breakdown of men to women. They know everything about you, including where you live, who went to that movie, because they're trying to prove when they go into boardrooms that we did this, it can be done. Mm-hmm. You can do this on a low budget and get a high return, and people will go, because evidenced by these numbers. They were able to bring those numbers in that Monday right after opening weekend and green light a bunch of projects that have been sitting behind people's desks or logged away in people's email for months. So think about it like that, in that when you support Elayne's podcast, or if you support my book, or if you support whatever it is, that you are saying yes to more content like this. You are saying yes to supporting other women. You are doing your part in speaking in terms of where your dollars go, where your ears go, where your subscription, if you haven't hit the subscription button yet, where that goes. You're telling the marketplace what you value, and you're also creating a pathway, right, for the people coming up behind us who also have something important to say. And that might be you who's listening. So we have to do our part to pay it forward, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm not saying this because like I want you to go buy my book because for my ego. I'm saying this because Elayne has a book to write too. Mm-hmm. And if my book doesn't succeed, she won't get the advance that she's supposed to get on her book or the resources that she would need to actually market her book, because they'll be like, well, this person wrote this and they didn't succeed, right?
We're all connected.
We're all connected. So please, like, from the bottom of my heart, I wrote this book for all women so that they could come home to themselves. And so I really want you to see this book and feel supported and feel like I'm holding your hand as you read it. So please, go support it and please continue to listen to Elayne's podcast. And there's so much love here. You put so much energy into bringing beautiful voices together, but also for pulling out of each of us a message that resonates with your audience and where they are. And I know this takes a lot of energy and effort for you to do. So I want to let you know that I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate that message too, just for all of us to remember how connected we are. But that means a lot, because as you talked about during this interview, there are times when it's either lonely or hard that you have to get up and show up every day. So hearing someone like you and just you as a person say that you see me and the work that I'm trying to do.
I do see you, girl.
That means a lot. I see you too, girl. Thank you so much, Latham. You're fantastic. You already know. You're wonderful. It's great having you here. So much wisdom. And before you go, you've given us so much already, but what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
I want to give you the exercise that I call Confessions of Light. And I think it's so connected to your message and to what you all do at this podcast. And Confessions of Light is an opportunity for us to speak about the inspiration and acknowledge people who have made a personal beauty mark on your life. So as you prepare to use your own power and influence to benefit the lives of others and to bring beautiful service and product to the world, reach out to those who have supported and helped push you along your way. And so maybe make a short list of who those people are. Maybe there's like 3 people that you could think of who've been really influential. And maybe there's somebody in your universe who needs a push right now, who's going through it, or in your little, sister circle, or maybe you have like a group of people who, a leadership group or something like that could use a push. And you can take your journal out and maybe think about a few things that they've done that you want to just acknowledge them for. And then I would invite you to take a moment to either call or text or voice memo or make a little video and send it and let them know and confess to them what you're grateful for. And this is a practice that I try to do weekly, where there's a handful of people that I just flank with love and give thanks to. But you can make this a daily practice to acknowledge someone in even a small way. So that could be through a text or a post on Instagram or a Woman Crush Wednesday, whatever it is, or even writing a greeting card. But this allows us to practice gratitude and appreciate how blessed we are, especially when we're faced with challenge. And it also makes our army of angels who have swooped in to support us along our journeys feel appreciated and connected to their purpose and service to us. And I just want you to think about that and do that as an entrepreneur and as somebody who's constantly, moving towards your own growth and becoming a better version of yourself. Because along the way, we connect with so many people, and there's sometimes it's like, you're just collecting business cards, and other times you're really cultivating relationships. But there's people in your path that maybe you haven't talked to as frequently as you should or whatever. Like, make time to just acknowledge, even when, especially that you have nothing to ask for. Like, don't just reach out and be like, hey girl, can you do this or whatever. like be in the mind frame of blessing people just to bless them. And then like, when you have to, ask for something, it's like, they've already blessed you so much, and you can actually, feel gracious to be able to call on people so that you can receive more support. You can also open the gateway for new people to come in to support you because you're practicing gratitude. So I think, this Confessions of Light practice is really powerful. And it's the opposite of obviously confessing, like, in the traditional sense, where it's like you confess something of evil. This is confessing, light and love and how appreciative you are. So that would be my one piece of advice, because it keeps us humble. It keeps us on track. And it also keeps the people in our lives, feeling really good, and also champions of our work and champions of us. And especially if these are people also who are in positions of power or leadership that, and I'm not saying only bless those people, I'm saying bless everybody, but people who are in positions of power or leadership, if they hear from you on a regular basis, that you're blessing them too, right? That you're thinking of them, or you want to thank them, or whatever it is, on the smallest of things. It doesn't even have to be something big. These are people who could also sponsor you, meaning you're not in the room, and your voice is circulating in that room, and they speak up for you, right? So this is about investing in relationships and watering the garden of your life, watering the garden of your advisory board, and making sure that these people who have invested so much in you continue to do so, continue to keep you top of mind, continue to pray over you, and also move mountains for you that you don't even know about when you're not in these rooms, or you're not in these spaces, or you're not, you're not able to do the work for yourself. They're able to do the work for you. They're able to put your name in the deck. They're able to bring your name up in a meeting. They're able to submit you as a contractor, or get you a contract for something, or, you know what I mean? Or get your company to be able to take a bid on some work, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. Like everything, like you said, is connected. So we have to think about how a little bit goes a long way. And as much time as you're spending on social media, you could be spending like a fraction, like a tenth of that time doing this for a few people. And it's an investment in your future. And you're not doing it for the purpose of obviously, getting something on the back end, because you've already received, which is why you're doing it. But you're doing it, and it's also regenerative, like it pays for itself, So think about that and make it a regular thing, and not just like somebody took a lunch with you, you send them a thank you card, but keep up with people. Keep up with people.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Latham. She's just such a beautiful light. To find out more about her, to find out about her book and what she's up to now, just go to supportissexy.com. Go to that search icon at the top and just search Latham, Latham. Her show notes page will pop up with links, resources, ways to find out more about her. Supportissexy.com and just search Latham. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much. And until we chat again, always remember, support is sexy, and having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.